Good evening, campers, and welcome aboard the Starship Arborea. I'm Commander Exorcist, and it is time, once again, for Talk O Tuesday. This is my weekly Elite Dangerous show where I pick a Galnet article, read it, talk about it, primarily from a lore perspective, but I will break the fourth wall if necessary. It is going to be necessary for me to break the fourth wall this week because we have quite an interesting article to go over. Today's article comes from Radio Free Avalon. And if you haven't heard about them, I will explain later. But the war has been going on for a very long time. We have been at war in some stage or another for years. We had the Titans invade, and for almost a year we couldn't touch them. And then last year we systematically took them out one at a time, with the last Titan being Kosiho back in December. And so with that comes an interesting dilemma, the end of the war. And today what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to read this article, and the article is pretty heavy on the content of what I'm going to talk about here. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about a concept called reintegration. Now, reintegration is a topic that militaries throughout the history of the world have struggled with, because the concept is that you take a person, say just a regular citizen Joe of a country or an empire or whatever, and you take them, you instill a set of values into them, you train them to respond a certain way, you give them a weapon, give them experience, and you build a warrior class. Yes, there's always the idea of the warrior being born, but true warriors that are truly effective and capable to defend their homes and complete very dangerous missions, they are built. They are built through hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. A lot of times what militaries will do, though, is they'll spend all that time and money, all that energy to train somebody up as a quote-unquote warrior. But once the war is over, what do you do with that person? Unfortunately, a lot of militaries will just kind of give them a slap on the back and say thank you for your service and send you out the door. And so you end up with what we call reintegration problems. Reintegration is the process of transitioning from military service to civilian service. And it can be very difficult for someone who has spent their entire existence fighting to go into an environment where the fighting is no longer necessary. Then you'll see things like depression, PTSD. You'll see where they are constantly fighting the war in their heads or creating conflict with people around them. You get those kind of things that happen. And so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit in today's article. Today's article comes from the Radio Free Avalon, and it is called When Is War Enough? And so there was recently a congressional inquiry in the Federation, and the veterans of galactic warfare had some interesting things to say in a tense kind of back and forth with one of the congressional members. So let's take a look here. It says, representatives from the veterans of galactic warfare testified on Friday before congressional members on the reintegration difficulties faced by combat forces following the official conclusion of the Second Thargoid War. The war ended in spectacular fashion as the Titan Kosiho's attempt to invade Sol was thwarted by thousands of pilots and soldiers within a matter of days. And it was glorious. I'm not going to downplay, I'm never going to downplay the experience of the end of the Thargoid War. The invasion of Sol was extraordinary. That was a great twist to the whole thing. And to see that Titan in orbit around Earth and to be able to go in as with 20,000 real, break the wall, 20,000 real world commanders attacking that Titan, that was phenomenal. And I am forever grateful that I got to be a part of such a historical and game-defining moment. So I have a new favorite moment. Used to be Titan. It was the Gnosis, then it was Titan, Tyrannus. Now it's this. But it says the final conflict left Kosiho a caustic cloud of dust and debris in high Earth orbit. It is still there if you want to go see it. I think it'll be there forever. VGW Deputy Director Mark Ashton spoke with members of the Congressional Defense Caucus to discuss the challenges that military members face during reintegration to civilian life after a prolonged conflict. So organizations like the Veterans of Galactic Warfare, they work with combat veterans, soldiers, and Navy personnel. They work with pilots. They work with all these folks that have been engaged in conflict, and they provide resources. So the VGW is all over the place, and these are your veterans groups. These are the ones that come out and, they throw the little parties and stuff and maybe a bake sale here and there. But ultimately, their job is to lobby to the federal Congress and to get the Federation, and if they could get some insight into the other superpowers, that'd be nice. But their job is ultimately to encourage and advocate for veterans in these higher level organizations across the galaxy. And so VGW at this point is talking about that reintegration process, because now you have thousands and thousands of military personnel, okay? And then now you've got independent pilots that have experienced kind of the same thing. And so they're concerned about the requirements, the need. There's so much of a need for this reintegration process coming up, but there's also a twist to it. It says, our organization stands ready to work with President Winters with reintegration efforts, but we are concerned that ongoing conflicts undertaken by independent military organizations can jeopardize not only the transition process, but that of the new peace. So when the war happened, it was a unique situation for humanity, because you have military superpowers that are out there attacking the Thargoids, and then you have independent military organizations that are helping out, that did a lot of legwork. But now the war is over. Some of those organizations are still attacking. They're still operating as if there is a war going on. And what the director is talking about here is the potential for that to cause some serious harm down the road. Veterans groups have expressed concern about the lack of communication between official military command personnel and independent anti-Xeno operations during the war's conclusion. That's true. So now that the war is over, these superpowers need to reassert their authority in these systems and to declare maybe some rules or something, because you can't just have independent organizations going around and destroying everything just because that's what they want to do. That wasn't the intent of the war. That was the intent of salvation. That was not the intent of the war. The war was defensive. Salvations was xenocidal. Flat out. That's what that was. Recent organized assaults by anti-Xeno squadrons and HIP 22460 resulted in the complete elimination and pacification of Thargoids in the region. While the operation was initially lauded by observers as a positive outcome post-Kosiho, sentiment has turned slightly in favor of leaving the remaining Thargoid forces alone. I am 100% for that. And as a matter of fact, I don't think 22460 should have been eliminated. I don't support that. And I think that while the intention was probably good, I think it's causing more trouble than it's worth. And again, let's talk about HIP 22460 for a moment. So you've got these independent organizations out there, and what they're saying is that, there has to be some kind of control. There has to be some kind of measured and balanced approach. You can't just go around annihilating your enemy, all right? That's not effective warfare. As a matter of fact, that can come back to bite you seriously. But again, like I said, salvation was all about wiping out the Thargoids completely, destroying them until there was none left. That's assuming, and what that does is that assumes that every Thargoid is a military operative. They may not be. And to wipe out an entire race of beings because they shoot at us, we don't know everything about them. And so, the hoorah, go humanity and all that stuff, that's important, but it has to be measured, and there has to be a balance to it, and we have to have a boundary. And absolutely committing xenocide and destroying an alien race is not the effective way to do this. And I think that's kind of what they're talking about here. It says, Ashton added, VGW is concerned that if the superpower military forces do not establish clear rules of engagement in the coming weeks for independent pilots, that we risk potentially eliminating valuable anti-Xeno intelligence opportunities, or worse, inviting a new wave of Thargoid titans into our space. If we wipe out the Thargoids, we lose opportunities to gain any kind of knowledge about them. Throughout history, that has happened so often, where countries or organizations have absolutely destroyed or decimated an enemy force. And then they go in and they tear down their temples and their libraries and their buildings and their history, and we lose all of that. We lose that cultural aspect. And then we regret it. We always regret it. It's always a regret. Please listen to me. It's always a regret when we go back and say, man, I wish we hadn't burned the library at Alexandria. I wish we hadn't done this. I wish we hadn't carpet bombed this city. That, what wonders and what mysteries have we lost because we had to eradicate. Our desire to win was so powerful that winning came at the expense of complete loss for the other side, complete devastation. Anti-Xeno representatives were outraged at insinuations that their operations could bring about another wave of Titans or otherwise wreak havoc. Representatives declined to speak with RFA for this article. Now, again, the Thargoid War started because of salvation. I joke on here, salvation lives. I think it's funny. It's more of a meme than anything. But the reality is the Thargoid War started because we started it. And when you win a war, you can't keep going around and poking the bee's nest. The bees will retreat for a while, but eventually they're going to come back. The Thargoids will be back. But if we keep poking them, they may come back 10 times worse. But if we just leave them alone for now, I think they've been beaten back pretty well. They haven't sent any new ships. They haven't invaded any new systems. They're very passive at this point. They're pretty much back to what they were before the war. You don't mess with them, they won't mess with you. And so, I think it's important that we consider that and just lay off a little bit and leave the remaining ones alone. Let's get some scientists out there, study and research, and let's focus on reintegration for our military personnel, the people that had their brains modified and were stuck in cryotubes inside of the Thargoid Titans. Did you guys forget them? They're still out there. So Congressman Ben Flexo, the CDF Deputy Chairman for Strategic Resources, shared the view that anti-Xeno forces with a hyper-focus on eradication of all Thargoids are no better than the enemy they fight. So I want to talk about this last statement. One of the biggest challenges, as someone who has break the fourth wall in real life, someone who has been to war, someone who has fought in war, one of the biggest challenges of fighting a conflict, especially a conflict that is extensive, ongoing, prolonged. You ready for this? The biggest challenge is not becoming your enemy. We sometimes, well, I say sometimes, we always have to make sacrifices. And in those situations, we can make so many sacrifices that we lose who we are as people. And my encouragement to those who want to seek out and destroy the Thargoids completely, don't become your enemy. Even if the Thargoids were completely genocidal and ready to wipe out humanity, which I don't think they were. I don't think they are. I mean, they could have started that. There's no evidence to support that. But even if they were, doing the same thing to them makes us no better. It makes us no better. And what it does is it fuels resentment. And it devalues the efforts and the contributions and the sacrifices made by other members of the community, the people that sacrificed themselves. All of the people that died in that war, their legacy is tarnished when the very people that fought alongside of them turn and become like the enemy. It's important that when we're fighting a war and we're engaged in these kind of activities, that we remember who we are. Remember what we're doing. This was a defensive war. We defended. We won. So, this will be interesting to see how this turns out and how it plays out, because the HIP 22460, I'm very surprised that that the assault that they led cleared out the Thargoids. I think that's very disappointing. It's disappointing to see the Goids gone from that location, because it was such an iconic place in the history of Elite, and it is gone. And I don't know what happens next. But I'm not going to come out and straight up say that I agree with Ben Flexo here, but I do share the concerns of the deputy director. I think that it's important that the time is now to lay down your arms, defend where you need to, but go home. Pack your stuff and go home. It's just time to do that. Hey, folks, these are the disciples. If you would like to support my work, then go to commanderexorcist.tv/support, where you can pledge your support. You get early access to playthroughs, you get a monthly vlog, and a couple other cool little goodies, things that do not appear here on the main channel. Would love to have your support. And that's going to be it, my friends, for Taco Tuesday. This was an interesting one, and I promised I would talk a little bit about it once we got toward the end. Radio Free Avalon is yours truly. This is not a True Galnet article. This is me. This is an article that I wrote, and I typically do this when Galnet doesn't publish something and I really have something to say, or if Galnet does publish something and I feel like this is a more effective way for me to get my point across and kind of talk about it. And so this is full-on wall breaking at the moment. I wrote this article because, and a lot of the topics, the things in this, they're true. This is 100% true. Obviously, the congressional thing didn't happen, but that reintegration process and the concepts and having to deal with coming home from war and how we abandon so many people in that capacity, yes, that is 100% true, and it is unfortunate. And I encourage my my fellow commanders who are maybe struggling with that to get some help, talk to somebody, because there's plenty of people out there. You'd be surprised how many of us out there have done things that keep us up at night. It's a swear. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me for this Taco Tuesday. I'm Commander Exorcist. Take care, fly safe, and I will see you out there. Good night, everybody.